This YCN segment is brought to you by LaValley Building Supply and Middleton Building Supply.
Welcome back, YCN Sports Talk. Jeremy Stout, Brett Franklin in studio, and as we continue our baseball previews, we move to the National League Central, and last week talked the National League East, a tight division that's got a lot of players, basically 3 of the 5 teams in play. This division might be the same, and we'll just kind of quickly break that down. I know a lot of fans out here don't really know much about the NL Central, don't really care that much. It's obviously the Cubs division. It really seems to be to lose, as they've had a couple not down seasons, but since they won the World Series, they haven't really been there. They seem to be the favorites. Can they kind of, I mean, I know we're making the picks, so you don't have to give us your picks, but is this the year that they need to bounce back and show us they're for real?
Must win. I think Joe Maddon's on the hot seat if they don't win this year, right? Third largest payroll, one of the top payrolls, we'll say, in Major League Baseball, and some guys that they've offered big contracts to really haven't come through. So I think this is a must-win for Chicago, and I think for Joe Maddon,
right?
Joe Maddon, talking NFL there for a second, wondering where my mind was. Joe Maddon, I think he's kind of, he's pushed all the right buttons, but I think now we're starting to see that pressure where the Cubs, it's interesting. Once you win, and once the fan base gets a little taste of the championship glory, I mean, you're expected to get back there. And again, with the way the Cubs are spending money, there's really no excuse why they can't. I look at the rest of the Central, and I think that as far as teams that can compete, I think the Cardinals will be much better. I don't see Milwaukee really being back in the fray this year, and we'll talk about that with our picks coming up. But I think this is the Cubs division to lose. I think this is a must-win season, and not just, get into the playoffs. I mean, to get to the NL Championship Series and maybe even a World Series. I think those expectations are high for the Cubs.
All right, you talked about the Cardinals. They got, obviously, a big piece, and Paul Goldschmidt added an offensive player. They got Molina. He's going to be back. I think he started his first game either yesterday or today, and he looks like that guy who we think he's going to get old at some point and not be able to contribute. But is this the Cardinals? They kind of, they didn't do anything last year. Obviously, the Brewers and the Cubs were the teams, but the Cardinals were right there. Now they add Goldschmidt. He might even be one of the biggest additions in the offseason when you have, obviously, Bryce Harper and Manny Machado trading teams. Could the Cardinals be a sneaky good team right up there?
You didn't even mention Andrew Miller in there as a pickup this season as well.
Yep.
I think the Cardinals will be better. You remember they fired their manager halfway through the season last year. All of a sudden, they started to win games under their new skipper, and I think it'll be a rejuvenated Cardinals team. St. Louis has been the quiet, consistent franchise, I think, at least of the last 20 years in baseball. You could argue they should have more World Series championships than they do. But I think this franchise has been kind of quiet and down here these last couple of years. I think they'll make a resurgence. I think they'll definitely make a play for an NL wild card spot, but I definitely expect them to be better. I think 90 wins will win this division, and again, we'll reveal who will get it. But I think the Cardinals will be right in the thick of things.
And what about the Brewers? I know you mentioned them briefly there when we were talking about the teams that, could they repeat? Could they get back to the playoffs? Obviously, they had an amazing bullpen. That was the strength of their team, plus a lot of offense. Is that something that can be repeated this year, or is it that kind of bullpen caught fire and maybe they don't quite have enough?
I think the Brewers' window was last year. I think, right, like those runs don't come very often for a franchise like Milwaukee, and I think that was the year that they had it. Yelich, great player. He's going to be a guy that's going to be putting up the numbers, but I think the Central is much better than it was last year. And, again, I think last year was their year. It doesn't come very often for Milwaukee. I think they'll take a step back this year. I think they'll finish in the middle of the pack. Maybe charge for a wild card spot, but I'm not really buying into the Brew Crew.
Yeah, it's going to be interesting in the NL Central because you have those 3 teams that we mentioned, plus obviously you have the Reds and the Pirates. Probably not going to challenge, but we'll put them up on the board.
Reds should be better.
Better, right.
Yeah, Pirates should compete.
Right. I think you got 5 teams who might be able to hover around 500, maybe a game or 2 below or above, but you're right. Those 3 teams seem to be the top teams for that division, but we'll make our picks later in the Salt Hill Pub Picks of the Week and rank those teams. We'll take a break. When we come back, we'll talk some college basketball. Conference Championship week going on now. Brackets revealed on Sunday, and then a week from Thursday, the NCAA tournament officially starts, not counting the play-in games. So we'll take a break and come right back. Brett Franklin, Jeremy Stout, YCN Sports Talk.